Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. It's a Jacked Up Review Show. Jacked Up Review Show.
Okay, so we're back with another exclusive episode. I have Facebook TV Elite member Hugh Kenneth David. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, Cameron. Thank you for having me on this.
Anytime.
In addition, if you don't mind me doing a quick plug, in addition to TV Elite, I run a number of podcasts myself, all of which are on hiatus, funnily enough, right now.
Oh, man.
You can listen to them via the usual sort of networks online. One is Hustlers of Culture, which has been running 5 years, which is myself and my film critic friend Leslie just talking about whatever takes our fancy. One is Binges and Box Sets, where my friend Anna Hussey and I review television shows. And finally, there's Real History, which is where myself and my friend Jenna, who is in the process of doing a master's in history, and I'm an English and history teacher by training, as well as having worked in film and TV. She and I take a film that's historically based, and we talk about the history side of it, and then at the end we give it a score, just for fun, So, we haven't done Braveheart yet, but for example, we would do something like Braveheart, and at the end it would be like, hey, 20% is accurate, the rest is rubbish, So that's what people can find me online and what I do. You can find all those podcasts on Facebook and Twitter if you want to talk to me. So, but thank you for the invite. I've been looking forward to this. I do like what I see of your work online when you've posted stuff for us to read and review and chat.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to just kind of discuss a lot of stuff because, for a while there was so many Facebook groups, long story short, that just had so many snobs, just people who couldn't, write to save their lives, just would get in arguments for the sake of it. And it's like, how old are you fuckers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does feel like you need to go somewhere where people are a bit more reasonable. And if someone does come along and say, well, actually, I don't like that thing you posted about, nobody gets into a fight about it, and the person doesn't themselves make a big deal.
The widescreen group was good, and they did have to cut down on people who were just, bashing each other over the award-winning movies. And it's like, okay, we're gonna have a mix of everything, blockbusters and everything. So stop doing this whole, I don't watch that. And it's like, this is for everybody. We all kind of watch a bit of everything, and we all,
I don't understand it anymore. I'm old enough to be pre-internet, and back then the way I saw it was if you ran into someone and they happened to like a film you did, like the films we're going to talk about tonight, then that was kind of that was the thing you bonded over. And if you disagreed about it, you just didn't waste time arguing. It was like this, life's too short. Let's just talk about something we do like to discuss.
Exactly.
Right, and that's all seems to have gone now in the current era. It seems to be that people want to, I don't know, people seem to have such an attachment to these things that if you attack or if you even vaguely criticize the thing they love, you are criticizing them. And I'm like, separate the two, guys.
There's that, and it's like, I don't know, people seem to just get more just stuck up recently, and it's like, okay, so when did we start having all these guys who are just, I don't know, just all of a sudden just being just like stirring up trouble, just stirring up conflict, like, oh my god, I love that, I hate that, and it's just like, can you just, it used to be you were short, sweet, to the point, you were a little descriptive, and now somewhere along the way everyone just had to be just very just vague, and oh, how dare you, sir, and it's like, okay, so now you're mixing insults with, and stating it as a joke. Come on now.
Yeah, I wonder how much of that has come out of people's first interactions of this kind being over a headset and mic while they're shooting each other. And this is not me to I love video games. I am not being down on it, but what I mean is I got out of first person shooters like nearly 20 years ago because we would install Quake 3 at the local internet cafe where I worked, and we were all having fun doing LAN parties and stuff, and then we opened it up to the internet, and the next thing you know, you got some 12-year-old camping out who takes you apart and leaves you a finely worded insult on the bottom, and then you're done. You become fodder. And I was like, well, what's the point? I don't pay my money to be online to game for the sake of being someone else's cannon fodder, and that was the start of it. And then I noticed after a while that a lot of the dialogue and the communication, yes, it's based in kind of trash talking a la sports, a la WWE, but
Exactly.
where that leads is where is the thing you just described. It's that kind of at the end result is I can't speak in depth about everything because I need it to be so short that you spot it when I type it or if I say it briefly. And
and if you're just going to be a douche and just teabag or commit friendly fire, then I don't want to play this game. And I stopped worrying about online when my Sony PS3 kind of crashed on its online, and I just said, okay, well, it's always better with people I know anyway. Get it? Instead of 5-year-olds, using every kind of non-PC, verbiage. And I get that that's part of gaming culture, but at the same time, that's also where I think there's a lot of just disruptive forces, so to speak, and some real actual Nazis just hiding behind that.
Very true, very true. It is quite a scary situation online, and which has leaked into the real world. But the prophecy predates all that.
Yeah, this is an interesting franchise. So getting into it, guys, it's an action, sci-fi, horror, fantasy franchise. It's been pretty much placed in every area at all of the video stores. It was just always one of those. You just see it on TV on occasion. Sci-Fi Channel would on occasion show both the first and second movie. FX would, back in the days when they owned pretty much every other kind of Lionsgate or Dimension Films production, would show part 3. So it's a 5-part series. It was actually directed by the creator of Highlander, Gregory Wyden.
Yeah.
Hit and miss career with him with the whole, Backdraft.
Yeah, I had forgotten he'd been behind Backdraft. I was talking about Backdraft with a friend of mine recently, and I'd completely forgotten he wrote that because he was a firefighter.
That's wild. And so that kind of explains just some of the other mysticism and just uncanny nature of it. There's a lot of other just kind of details of this. It's known for starring, Christopher Walken, post fame as Archangel Gabriel, and it's interesting how each of these just pretty much, it's pretty similar to Highlander in and of itself. And everyone, when everyone thinks of Highlander, they're like, oh, sword fights. It's like, no, I mean just in terms of like immortals, coming to fight each other, some, actual scripture that they swear by, and part 1 is definitely one of those. Much like Constantine and Lucifer, the TV show and comic, it's been interesting how some people kind of reference it both in terms of the folklore as well as just what was that one movie, with such and such. And for whatever, in recent years, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, what's the movie where Viggo Mortensen plays Lucifer? And it's like, well, this is the one. This is the one. And I kind of was hit and miss on it when I first saw it. I saw so many critics I know and liked just bash it, and I was just like, it's hardly what I would call garbage. It's kind of loose in its depiction, kind of like Blade. You kind of just have to rewatch it a few times to really figure out where it's going. It's not scary horror, but it is kind of just because it's dealing with demons and everything, and there's some gory segments, it gets that. Well, what's your takedown on it?
I mean, so here's the thing. I kind of have a taste for oddball one-offs that try and do things we've seen in written fiction well, and so I'm a big fan of the two films. When people say to me, "Oh, name me something I probably haven't seen that's really good," Prophecy is one, and the other one is Cast a Deadly Spell, aka Lovecraft, which was one of HBO's first big movies.
Yeah.
And that also is that, goes in every section of the video store kind of thing, because it was Private Eye, it was it was a little bit of comedy, but there was there was the horror element, there was a
Lovecraft
fantasy element.
inspired. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah. And so I was God, sorry.
yeah, this one is definitely one that could have easily been a Twilight Zone or X-Files type episode. So I think there's some appeal there. Just all these, and this I joke recently that this might be a prequel to Candyman because you got Virginia Madsen once again just fighting,
That's
on
kind
dead.
of a cool thought.
I wish it was, but it is kind of similar to Candyman if you just want to see something kind of loosely gothic, I guess, and it's just making use of its where it's located. In this case, it's not New Orleans or Chicago, it's Arizona, and there's a Native American ritual place, so it's very mystical.
I mean, here's the thing. I cannot find. I've been looking for years for like a decent interview with Gregory Wyden, the creator. Is it Wyden or Vidden? I don't know. I guess it's Wyden.
I think I would go with Wyden. I mean,
yeah. So Greg Wyden, I can't find. I mean, I've been looking for years, and I can't find much. And other than knowing what he's written and the fact that he also wrote a novel, which is also quite interesting in its style and so forth, all we can do is rely on what we see, with proper artistic kind of assessment. And The Prophecy, when it dropped at the time, it's middle of the 90s. Like you mentioned, all those things that it could fit into, and it's the perfect time for it. Twilight Zone, X-Files. Candyman. It's 95. The Prophecy comes out, and it at least in England it didn't get a theatrical. We got it straight to VHS, and I remember buying the VHS thinking for something had sold me on the idea. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been the cast to begin with, because Elias Koteas I really like in a lot of things. He was great in
Casey Jones, Ninja Turtles.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. There was that side, and then there was his art house side with Exotica and stuff like that. And then you get Virginia Madsen, who, after The Hotspot, I mean, come on,
Yeah, there you go. And so,
and
Eric Stoltz here plays the good angel named Simon. So, it's interesting how, I think that's kind of the cult of its appeal. You got, fans of the actors seeked it out, as well as just it's kind of its own original mix, making use of Old Testament, Christianity, as well as just, but it's not being a preachy movie. It's just all, it doesn't have any religious agenda. It's just all just fantasy, angels fighting, good versus evil.
But you said it was like Highlander. I think that's the key, because there is an earlier script of Highlander that is Greg Wyden's entire draft before it got rewritten and then glammed up with the rock video stuff, and it's so much leaner and it's so much more like The Prophecy. It's much more kind of guys in coats and with their swords hidden going around like forests and towns and churchyards, and it's none of it's in the big city.
And you got the weather kind of speaking for everybody to create a mood. And
so I wonder. Yeah. So do you think that may have influenced this? Do you think that maybe The Prophecy is partly him going, well, they didn't do that the way I wanted. This is what I'm going to do now.
Exactly. And he still had contacts here at Dimension Films, who had taken over the franchise of Highlander by that point. So there you go. And
good point. Yeah.
It was just a cheaper to make movie. It could have easily gotten, like you say, some countries went straight to videos, some countries got, brief release, but either way, it did definitely, every other few years, I see it just show on the various movie channels. And it's, again, rarely, shown on Sci-Fi because it is it's brief gore, but that's just it. They have to do a lot of just quick editing. But I think that's just it. It's just kind of just laid back. Even though there's some Native American ritual, it doesn't involve a house, so you can't say it's a Shining knockoff. It's just one of those. It's just fun. And it's kind of interesting how on a recent rewatch, it's not the most deepest, but it's also not mindless either, if that makes sense. It's not shallow, but it is just kind of just a little deliberately vague. It's because it's trying to be mysterious, and it's just using the actors to get that point across. So if you're a fan of, again, all these other stuff we've been talking about, Candyman, Hellraiser, is there maybe even Phantasm, Blade, or Yeah,
Even the
Wishmaster.
crow, maybe there's a little bit of the gothic in the way the angels are styled. They're
Oh
all
yeah,
long hair, sunglasses. I mean, Eric Stoltz's coat. I wanted that coat, man. I mean,
there you
it's
go.
just like
Yeah,
that was such a great looking coat. But and then that's the other
the
thing I noticed on the.
craft in the days.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. The craft definitely, particularly with Prophecy 2 and sort of Brittany Murphy's character in Prophecy 2. Yeah, that
is there a connection there?
no, but I can see someone who liked one going, oh, I can get with her character on that one. I think but it's I think this was the thing, wasn't it? It's almost like this was what Dimension was cashing in on, wasn't it? In the 90s,
Kind of. Yeah.
not the prophecy itself, but all these other elements we're mentioning, and it's like the prophecy somehow just fell into like this kind of in sort of middle of all of these things we're talking about without being one of those targeted things where it was like we are making this to sell it to, it wasn't like every other Dimension horror franchise where every sequel is just, hey, make sure the teenagers get to see the same thing we want to show them every time. This is the
Exactly.
weird one. This is the oh, it's the guy who made Highlander, it'll be great, and you're like, it's so not like what you expect it to be. It's funny and it's hard boiled, and there are moments that feel like hard boiled crime with Cotius as the cop who's lost his faith. But then you have all these. Then halfway through it switches to being out, as you say, Native American reservations and out in the desert, and there's I never understand why they're going to school in a building that is so bad that they think it might have vagrants in it. I never got that, like, is it a church that got ruined or something? I don't know.
I think
And
everyone's kind of drawn to it because they're just like
yeah,
so mystical. Everyone talks about the folklore of it, but like you say,
yeah,
that could have been better developed, that section. Like you say, a lot of people kind of write these off because Dimension was going crazy on the horror sequel bandwagon, like Children of the Corn and all that crap. But this is way more highbrow as opposed to lowbrow. It's
Yeah.
not. Even if you want lowbrow stuff like From Dusk Till Dawn, I recommend everyone check this out because it's just laid back. It's a lot of fun. It's also very interesting, kind of just seeing how, for lack of a better word, how they just kind of just embrace a lot of these kind of just. You brought the crime elements. That's kind of very true. It does kind of have a lot of I Come in Peace, Shocker.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Even Fallen with Denzel Washington, so it's just this is around the same time where
Mhm.
they're doing all the just supernatural forces, and there's either an authority figure or there's just another entity. Maybe definitely like the Terminator, where the pursuing supernatural force has to stalk a family or a woman, and
Yeah.
it's up to someone
that's-
else who's just as capable, and you're along for the ride because you just want to see how it'll turn out, and it's very rewarding. Again, it may not be the best franchise of all time, but it's hardly poppycock. It's hardly just, earth-shattering. Oh, what were they thinking? There's definitely never... There might be a few cheesy music elements, but most of these definitely don't have moments where you're just like, this looks so schlocky.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that makes it work, that makes it still really watchable 25 years on.
Yeah,
Is this thing
that's a
that,
good
a lot of practical effects and a lot of, the effects work well and they're restrained and he doesn't overdo it. And even though he's asking the actors to do a lot of the hard work of convincing the audience that something serious is happening here without the script telling you anything straight up, as you said, he's trying to hint at stuff. All of that's what gives it the weight, right? I mean, we know how good these actors are even before this film and even after this film, Viggo Mortensen, for example, right? And so when they come, they really do just bring what we know them to. I mean, like, I'd forgotten how good Mortensen is in this. He he turns up, he does his thing, he's very sinister with very little, with just a little bit of lighting and the coat and the beard. But then he gets that moment at the end where you discover how really twisted he is as Lucifer.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
Pretty much. And even though it kind of doesn't use the typical kind of storytelling method, Act 1, Act 2, it just kind of it creates at least enough of a world to where you kind of want to rewatch it. Christopher Walken's not able to shake his New Jersey accent, but it doesn't come off as just like, oh, just like shut up. It's not like a Schwarzenegger thing where it's like, oh, I'm not German.
Yeah. This is not End of Days quite.
Yeah. It'd be an
but-
interesting double feature, though. I gotta say.
yeah, that would be good. I might have to do that actually. The thing
Gabriel
I like
Byrne,
about
you want to fight Chris Walken on screen as the devil?
Byrne versus Mortensen, I know who my money's on.
Oh man, that'd be fucking awesome.
Wouldn't it be? Wouldn't it just be great? I think one of the things that I find interesting rewatching the first three back to back. I'll put my hand up and say I've never seen 4 and 5, which I know are in the mythology, but are effectively their own kind of TV movie separate piece, so to speak. I know that Walken's accent is really interesting. I don't know how they got him to do these films. Like I don't know what was the deal, the contract. I presume with the first film he thought he was like interested in the idea, but in the second and third film his accent not only comes out more, but he's almost re-saying lines from the first film. Like they're trying to turn him into a kind of not just Candyman, but it's almost like they're trying to turn his Archangel Gabriel into a one of these horror movie figures, a la, you name any franchise where they have a catchphrase and they have a way of repeating it. They want him to be that, and he can't be that. He's something. He fundamentally as a character won't be that, and you can just sort of see him kind of chewing the words, and just his accent comes out more. By the time you get to the last one, he's like more of a human, he goes through this phase of being the Archangel in the first film. He's almost like a gangster in the second film, like he's just walked out of King of New York with a different outfit. And then in the third film, he's I don't even know what to describe what he is in the third film. He's just so different.
Yeah, these movies, they're distorted, but fortunately enough people have made notes on them, so I have, the Wikipedia page in front of us. But it's having gone through them recently, they definitely, I can definitely say they have a bit of a change of tone. But like that's totally true. Where it's just like they were trying to market it like all the other franchises, but yet it wasn't going to be like that because it's just doesn't even have the same kind of plot arcs or characteristics, so to speak. Because like you say, Gabriel is just kind of a mischief maker. He's not exactly like the Leprechaun, but he's definitely not at all like Mike Myers or Pinhead, where he's just going to stalk.
Exactly. I think they were trying to position him like that, but they didn't.
He does add a lot to it. Where he's just kind of like, so with movie 1, it's just kind of a fun, just kind of world building, followed by occasional, suspenseful moments, and then just an all-out slugfest. But
yeah, pretty much.
It does kind of what you think's going to happen doesn't happen, and that's kind of what makes it stand out more. It's just atypical. So 4 out of 5 for me. Prophecy 2, first direct-to-video sequel. We are greeted by a new presence in the form of Jennifer Bills. Hi, Jen. And being shaped by the vanishing Shun, known as Russell Wong, who would later go on to be on blockbusters like Escape Plan Free and Romeo Must Die. So there you go. He plays a good angel, Danielle, and this actually has a romance with a human. So this is an interesting differentiation. I like how it's not, even though there's some brief sex, it's not a sleazy movie. A scene stealer for me was the Archangel, good angel, Michael, played by Eric Roberts. So this is as close. This is as close as you get to Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader. You got him just staring down, saying, "If you enter, you will be defeated by the forces of good." He says something to that extent, but not, not word for word, guys. I'm not quoting the movie because how can you quote this movie? But yeah, he just him staring down Chris Walken is actually a pretty fun scene because it's just two actors who star in anything, and just seeing them just kind of just both just chewing it up and actually believing it is like that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie.
It is great, and the thing I like about the second one for me is still the weakest of the 3, but the second one is the one that I still enjoy on a kind of slightly trashy level. Like you say, it's got really good. Well, it's got really good actors. Like you say, it's got people who can perform. and they're in this weirdly low budget film that is written by the future producer of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Or one of them, and shot by him, and he's clearly working to a very limited budget and doing his very level best, and they can't afford even the lighting is not as good as the first film or the third film.
No,
It's very
it's not.
it's very urban and very kind of, we're just going to shoot very quickly here and there. But then you get people like Brittany Murphy, rest her soul, who's this really good performer, really puts her heart into a very small character that's very underwritten. Beals is never less than good in anything she does. Like, I've never seen her do anything bad, even in Junkins. Roberts, we all love Roberts, man. You gotta love Roberts.
Yeah,
but Glenn Danzig turns up for like 30 seconds, and he's like pretty good for what he is, right? And
Elizabeth
then
Dennehy shows up. Yeah. Bruce Abbott from Reanimator shows up as a priest.
Right.
But this was...
Well, he's technically playing the Cottius role. Thomas Daggett is actually meant to be the cop who goes back to being a monk. That's technically the connection. It's not quite exact, but it's, they spell it with an extra T, but it's the same name.
Gotcha.
And then the other thing that they're doing with continuity, which is the thing I really love about this set of films, is Steve Heitner as Joseph, the guy, the morgue attendant.
Yes, that's literally the only connection other than Gabriel is that he's in the first three movies always as the same lab tech. And to say, the lighting isn't always the same, but it's never at a point where you're just like, this is clearly direct-to-video. It's one of those...
Yes.
Dimension was always good about... And, Artisan Entertainment was always good about just making these kinds of movies that, whether they were direct-to-video or for TV or cinema, they all looked theatrical, if that makes sense. And this was well-liked by Moria.nz, the Academy of Science Fiction Fantasy.
Yeah, I like it.
Films.
Yeah, Richard Scheib.
I read that place from time to time, and they always bring up so many obscure ones that are great encyclopedia, and they award the Saturn Awards. But yeah, they were really taken back by this back when it came out. I think it won a few awards. So that's true. It's interesting. I guess as trashy as it gets is that, Gabriel, like you say, just kind of lets out just a few over-the-top lines, but it's just walking, chewing scenery. He takes this teenage girl played by Brittany Murphy, and basically she's just committed suicide, and he's like, yeah, but you know about these guys, so I need your assistance in locating them. And you get to just not die.
Yeah. And she gets the great line of going, so you kept me alive because you don't know DOS.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
There are some fun stuff. And it kind of avoids being lowbrow, but it isn't, it's not A grade, but it's a decent beat picture. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
Compared to other movies where it was just like, they would rush it, they would use crappy slow motion or some other garbage. This does not do that.
No, it doesn't. And I'm still trying to work out how they got that good a cast for the second one. Do you know what I mean? Like, the first one has a great cast, and I get why. I can imagine the script is pretty good, but then you get the sequel written by someone else with another director, and it's like, we'll turn up.
Oh, yeah. I think this was around the time where they were doing a lot of movies and they were indecisive on where they would release them. And
okay.
And it seemed like that was pretty common with Dimension. This could have gone to the theater and killed it. And then again, probably not. But it did its job. And so 3.5, maybe 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I mean, one thing I got to say about the big difference for me between the two is the style and quality of the action. Like Dan Bradley, who ran the stunts on the first film, of course, would go on to much greater fame.
Born Identity, Expendables, and Bond films is like, holy fuck.
All of that, and there's nobody quite as good as him on 2 and 3. I mean, Russell Wong gets to show a little bit of the skill he's got, but weirdly, for a film that involves angels crashing into each other and finding each other, you don't really see his martial arts. You just see more of his physical presence as a whole, and in that sense, it's more of an acting role for him.
That's a very good point. He doesn't. It's like he didn't want to be typecast, so he, at the same time, just kind of like, he's been in other big crime movies like, New Jack City, and so to see him just kind of here, he just tries to be naturally good, and he and Bills actually do have a lot of cool chemistry and sex appeal, so I think that
I thought so.
sells it as opposed to just being routine. And it's definitely a little more Highlander here when you see some of the lightning and weather doing the talking.
That's true.
So
yeah,
part 3 picks up right up after part 2. Walken's in the background as a supporting character. He's now an angel, as banished from being an angel. They haven't killed him. They just said, okay, you're going to be a bum. You're going to be a human.
yeah. They basically make him a human, which is like his worst nightmare, which is quite clever.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's no
instead of just we're going to resurrect you for the billionth time. You came back to life. It wasn't enough the first time.
Yeah,
you respawned like in a video game. Yeah.
I mean, both of the sequels are very good at like picking up in the first few minutes, even if they just use like voiceover, and have someone who's a sound alike. But they're very good at filling in the connection, you know. So like you hear at the beginning of Prophecy 2, you hear someone who's clearly not Viggo Mortensen, you know, doing a Viggo Mortensen Satan and saying, "Oh, I'll bring you back." And then in this one, as you say, we start straight away. We have somebody who looks like Jennifer Beals. I'm not convinced it actually is her.
It's not her. No.
Yeah. But you just have a brief scene to fill in what's happened to her from the first film and the fact that she's now got somebody to protect, etc., etc. By the way, if you're listening to us this far, we've been really good about not being too spoilery, but I think we do need to mention at this point, and this is a spoiler for the 2, is that at the beginning of 3, the character who's supposed to be Bill, she has a kid, and that's the essence. That's essential to us talking about 3. We can't talk about 3 without mentioning that.
Right.
So we can kind of
direct continuation, and Walken is again just a supporting character, still just kind of hanging out at the various bars. At this point, he's way more cynical and kind of just laid back, just kind of a unnatural ally. Yeah, there were some moments where it's like, is that his hair or not? I can't tell, but I've seen worse though. I've seen so many other worse movies that use stock footage or some other garbage. We have Vincent Spano as a fallen angel who's here to be the protector, and this does a good job. Yeah, it does a good job of just kind of just upping the game and not just making use of all the various semi-known and unknowns who done everything, TV guest spots, voice acting, and Spano, he would later be FBI agent Porter on Law & Order SVU, but he's done plenty of other TV movies and films like Indian Summer, Alive, City of Hope. So fun actor who unfortunately does a lot of made for TV material, but there's a few not bad car chases in here. I would say it felt like slightly overlong, but it wasn't boring. It was, again, just more fantasy, kind of good versus evil fighting each other. Near the end, it looked like they slightly ran out of budget, but it wasn't. It feels more like a music video. And I got to say, it is pretty watchable, despite it being by the same guys who worked on, every other Wes Craven knockoff and Terminator Genesis sucks. So
well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, so Joel Swasson, who was a producer in all these films and wrote the third one,
he understands it better than anyone. Yeah,
and he and Patrick Lucia directed that third one. I started keeping an eye on Lucia just because I was like, well, okay, he did something. He did his best with very little, and I was quite impressed. And like you say, he was like Dimension's go-to guy for all these lower films, and then when he finally got his chance, he did My Bloody Valentine 3D, and then he did Drive Angry.
Right.
And I saw both of those in the cinema. I have a soft spot for both of them as kind of slightly bigger budgeted trash, but fully embracing the trash. They know what they are and they have fun with it. And I feel like it's great going back and watching Prophecy 3, and you kind of sort of see that this is where he's starting out and where he's going to go. I think you were saying earlier with the first one, that sense of the Terminator, the relentlessness of the foe. This one's very Terminator. You know what I mean? The kid is very kind of Terminator 2 John Connor. He's very kind of Edward Furlong, except now he's old enough to be the guy on the bike with the sunglasses. The way he gets it is very Arnie.
Very true.
But then they do other things which I really enjoyed. Like one of the things that I still enjoy because I'd forgotten it happens is the fact that the girl from the first film turns up now older, when they get to the
Yes,
reservation.
they have all these Easter eggs that actually aren't half bad, and
Yeah.
do a good job of just kind of just allowing. I did forget about that, and I did have to check it at first. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And it's kind of interesting how basically it just allows the whole thing to flow better. There's never at any point where you feel like someone who wasn't involved from day one doesn't have anything to do with this here. And there's no forced humor or anything, but at the same time, it's having fun doing what it's doing. So it's serious, but it's never to the point where you're just like, this is just so formulaic and boring, unimaginative.
So I agree. So given what we gave Prophecy 2 as a score, what would you give Prophecy 3 then?
Probably a 3.5 or a 3 out of 5. It's definitely watchable. It's not a bad way to end the whole franchise, and it's definitely better than what Lucier later went on to do. Like again, Terminator Genesis, which was a big
which I still haven't
budget
seen.
I was not a fan of that. I know many are, but you look at it now, it had cool ideas, but it was just very trashy in execution. So it's just like, okay.
So the reason I'm asking you what you score you'd give it, I noticed something really strange in the credits, right? And given what we've been saying about the way Dimension were doing things, the way people were involved, I am trying to work out why these people all got thank yous on Prophecy 3, not on the other two.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, Wes Craven, Jeff Sachs, who I know as a director because he did the Doctor Who TV movie that had Eric Roberts in it, Guillermo del Toro, and Steve Miner, all of whom I know did Miramax stuff in the 90s.
They probably were just giving him pointers, giving him support, and he was just thanking them because he had edited for Lucier had edited for Craven and all those other guys. So
I'd forgotten that. Right. So given it's his first directing,
I think he edited Mimic, which was a Del Toro. So there you go.
Yes, that makes sense. You know what? I completely missed that. It makes so much sense. I was just like, wow, that's really impressive that he got all these people to help him somehow. But yeah. And that also explains the Doctor Who TV movie connection because he edited that as well. I've just found it on IMDb. So and this all comes round again because he was an editor on 3 episodes of the Highlander TV series.
There you go. Yeah, I saw that. It meant to
just all loops round. Oh my god. So yeah, Scream, Mimic, Halloween H2O. God, he really was the go-to guy for that for editing for Miramax, wasn't he? For Dimension.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. Do you know what? I've never seen Red Eye. I should see that. I really want to see that at some point. That was one Wes Craven I've not seen. I need to try and see that. Anyway, sorry. So that's a moment where you go down the rabbit hole of IMDb and go. So that was felt at the time like the end of the trilogy. It had gone into a really bonkers place in terms of its own logic because it the basic premise of angels fighting each other because they're unhappy that God decided to favor humans over them. I have a lot of time for the idea because I don't think it's the most ridiculous concept to come out of the many bits and pieces that formulate Christianity in its text, right? It's like it's not the craziest thing when you look at the various texts that were not put into the Bible as a whole in at the Council of Nicaea in what was it 348 AD? I can't remember now. 349. Anyway, when the Roman Church at the time said, "Hey, this is what the Bible really is," and so I always enjoy people who like to mess around with that. But by the time we get to Prophecy 3, we are just out there. We're just in whole other territory with that's the Scottish actor who's playing the other angel that they're saying will bring us hope and freedom, and he's standing on a pile of bodies and you're thinking, what is this about? We're in our own world. So you since I've not seen them and I'm taking it you have, Cam, what's 4 and 5 like? What happens?
4 and 5 sound like they're still loosely related, but the style, this is when they're doing all the Hellraiser sequels in Romania, so it has that kind of look too. So long story short, part 4 feels like an Exorcist, Omen, Hellraiser type movie. Just this cop is going around trying to figure out why everyone's acting all possessed and weird, and of course One of them is a demon in disguise, played by Pinhead himself, Doug Bradley.
No way, really?
Yes.
Oh, I'd watch it for that.
Yeah, it's a watchable
wow.
B movie. It's really not unwatchable, like everyone was saying. It's like, no, this is not a Steven Seagal piece of shit or anything where, asylum level. Now, five, it barely, and Carrie Wuhar is also in here as a cool Scream Queen heroine. So, yeah, so she's the only connection in these two. You still have people, Sean Pertwee,
Oh yeah, always great.
son of, what was his father's name who played Doctor Who?
John Pertwee.
Yeah, so there you go. He's here as a fun cop hero.
Cool.
There's a lot more God and Satan symbolism, so that's why I give it a more Exorcist kind of feel.
Okay.
But just on its whole, it's light entertainment. It's not a must seek out, but it's hardly unwatchable garbage. So yeah, 3.5 out of 5 for that. I'd at least recommend one of these. Now, Forsaken. This has another sinister character who's supernatural and a bunch of renegade angels, played by the Candyman himself, Tony Todd.
Ooh.
Fighting him is Dylan, played by Jason Scott Lee, who's been on stuff like Hawaii Five-0 and Dragon: The Bruce Lee Story.
Yep,
and
that's what I remember.
It feels like a supernatural version of Leon the Professional. Hired a contract hitman saving a girl.
Okay.
Yeah, but near the end, it looks like they lost their budget. There's a lot of overexposed lighting, and gratuitous nudity, but it's fun. It's just running out of budget by that point. But yeah, there's a Wikipedia page showing the whole film series, and they were definitely filmed back to back. Steve Heiter plays the Archangel Gabriel. Oh, actually, no, he did not.
I was going to say, wasn't he? He was.
Yeah,
he was
no, sorry, Coroner Joseph. But yeah, it still has the same kind of thing, so it just feels like a spin-off thing. It might have worked better as a TV show, but it's not bad. But it's also going to be an acquired taste, so depending on how you accept low-budget B movies, then that's going to be the determination.
Oh, I love them.
All right, perfect. So you're the audience, but most people aren't going to nowadays because they're like, no Christopher Walken, I'm not doing it.
Well, to be fair, that's why I didn't. But I am the sort of person who, I mean, I think it comes from growing up in the VHS era. I think it comes from growing up when, like, late 70s, a lot of the crazy stuff that was thought suitable for kids, like Disney live action stuff. Weird stuff, and it gives you weird tastes, and then the blockbuster era kicks off, and all of a sudden everyone's got the money to shoot things, and you're like, oh, okay. So I kind of always have a soft spot for action movies. I have a soft spot for people who work at a lower budget. I also don't think you can grow up watching British TV and not respect what lower budgets can mean if you get good creatives in. Everything I watched as a kid in the 70s is dependent on a huge amount of imagination because they didn't have the money.
Exactly. I previously was doing an episode on Babylon 5, and that's definitely an example of, there's some B-movie elements, but it's also kind of part of the sci-fi genre, and because it's just so low budget, everyone kind of accepts it for what it is.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that. I actually I remember when the pilot was being talked about in Starlog, I think it was, or Cine Fantastique, and I had a friend of mine in the States actually videotape it for me and post it over so I could see it, because I was that intrigued at the idea. He was a friend who used to send me Star Trek ahead of time, and that was great. And I was just like, yeah. He used to, thanks to him, I could keep up with Next Gen when Sky bought it here. But it was one of those things where Babylon 5, just the idea that someone was going to put the money in, try a different show, use new techniques for special effects, I was in, and even when I watched it, it wasn't that great.
Well, yeah, this Stargate and Battlestar Galactica are like the three big major like sci-fi franchises outside of Trek or Star Wars, so it's interesting how they had that to compare to, and that was a possibility. But it's definitely was one of those where it just showed you that you can make any kind of thing. just regardless of the budget, just as long as the storyline was there, and I mean, it helps that both these films and various other TV around the same time, it's a different era then, guys, where you embrace what limited resources you have, and you use a lot of steady cam and, tracking shots and occasional handheld to create a bigger moment than what's there. And this franchise itself especially has limited CGI and just more practicals. Just pretty much they save all their action that you see in the trailer for, the explosive finale, and all the stuff in between is just simple chase scenes and suspenseful music playing. And it's like, I think that really is the way to go. It's like, if you're going to do gunplay or sword fights, that should be in the finale that we've all paid to see. At the beginning, to set it all up, then the rest is chasing or just keep it simple. And it seems like these were doing a good job of getting a lot of semi-known but affordable character actors who weren't uncommon to see on either the big screen or the small screen, especially with Madsen and Cotillas. They were doing every kind of movie back then. And Walken, he did everything, but he definitely lent a lot of cool professionalism and credibility somehow to this. So all in all, not a waste of time. I recommend everybody check these out. Now, obviously, if you're very nitpicky and everything, you're gonna be very bored by these. But if you like kind of semi-gothic, just kind of mystical fantasy adventure, then have fun with it. It's not gonna be earth-shattering or change the world, but it's hardly, unwatchable dribble. It's just kind of fun.
For people who are in England, it's on Amazon Prime Video UK, included with the subscription, so you can watch it for free, effectively. And
that's another thing too. They're very easy to come by, very affordable DVD or Blu-ray sets, and just very, like you say, streaming sites almost always feature some of these movies at one point or another. They're just fun.
Yeah. And I think people who like you, I think you mentioned earlier the feature version of Constantine. I think anyone who's come to Constantine via the DC TV stuff will probably dig this film.
Absolutely.
I think you get a big kick out.
Versus evil. If you want to see, Obi-Wan, Connor, Duncan MacLeod type adventure, just kind of light action fantasy. If you like Blade, definitely just kind of just have some fun with this. Just kind of see actors being actors and just laid back fight scenes.
This is the kind of film that I would love to see a special edition of, like a decent transfer. Some money put into making it look good and sound good, but also some extras where we can hear from people who worked on it. This is the kind of film
we
that
might have to write Shout Factory.
You know what? I'm surprised it hasn't turned up there already, but I imagine that has to do with everything Miramax being Dimensions. They're all tied up. Yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah. But I mean, we're seeing, Blade's about to get a 4K release. I mean, if Blade. Yeah, if Blade is 4K was announced today or yesterday, they put up artwork online, official artwork. So,
nice.
But that's in Europe. So I'm assuming the US, basically the digital bit said, here's Germany's releases from Universal. Presumably Warner Brothers will follow soon. But I'm just thinking, if we live in a world where that's possible, then it's I mean, when you look at some of the stuff that Arrow and Shout have put out, stuff that I never thought ever in a million years would get upgraded from VHS, and it finally they do the best, most beautiful editions, and you just think, how has everyone skipped the prophecy? And it's licensing, it's rights, and somebody should just cut the Gordian knot. I just think it's there's too many good people who are still alive who were involved with it, and the longer you wait, the less chance you have to kind of make a good fist of it in terms of an edition people would want to see. And you could just throw in the other films as extras. Do you know what I mean? Don't.
Right.
I'd pay for that.
Complicated.
No, I'd pay for that. But I mean, Greg Whiten's still working. He's just written the Backdraft 2 sequel that came out straight to video. And I believe he's working on the film that Chadwick Boseman was going to do before he died, which is the Black Samurai story.
Damn. So he just can't get away from mystical sword warrior.
No, you know how it is with Hollywood. I'm guessing that's why they gave it to him in the first place.
Yeah, it's like everything has to be based off the success of another film, and then you slowly make it be its own thing eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I mean,
it's kind of like how Now You See Me wouldn't exist without something like Ocean's 11 or Red, you know?
true. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of it like that.
And
But
then
it's
there's
very-
all these other knockoffs of Taken, Man on Fire, or Expendables. So there you go. You know, it's just
Mhm. Yeah, I did enjoy weirdly, and Now You See Me when I saw it, I was like, well, this is fine. This is okay. I was not expecting anything more than what I got, I guess.
exactly. And everyone acts like, you know, everything has to be big screen to get a bunch of sequels. Is like, no, there's plenty of stuff like these franchises we discussed today that get various other sequels because it's a passion of love, and they know that there's something there they can build upon to generate revenue. But sometimes it's even weirder how certain franchises don't get any other sequels. I thought they were going to do another Now You See Me or Equalizer at least, and it seemed like that's not in the interest. Same thing with Sicario. I was like, they did 2, and I'm like, I thought they were going to do a 3rd one. It's like, nope.
Well, here's where it gets interesting, because I know Taylor Sheridan wrote a 3rd one, or at least has the idea for a 3rd one, because he publicly stated when they did the first film that he had 2 more films in mind. And I guess,
maybe now that he's busy with TV, it's going to be a while. I don't know.
I was about to say, I imagine that's exactly the problem, because you know, once he became, you know, you hear what showrunners' lives are like. I can't imagine he's had a lot of time. And also, much as I enjoyed it personally, I think there was a lot of disappointment at the second film. I think the Italian director Stefano Sollima, I'm a big fan of his because he's done amazing crime TV shows in Italy that are very well well paced, well put together. I mean, his father was a famous director of spaghetti westerns, crime films, B movies. Wow. Stefano Sollima, Sergio Sollima was the father. Stefano Sollima is the son. So I was looking forward to it, and it was nice to see him play with a big budget and with American stars. But it just, I can see why people felt it wasn't as good as the first one. I mean, I like him, but he's no Villeneuve. But I quite enjoyed the second one. I thought it was all right. It just wasn't what I think people wanted.
It seemed like a lot of people went into it and they didn't know it was even related. I'm like, well, does everything have to have a number 2 in it?
Yeah, exactly. I
was going with a few other people and they were like, oh, I had no idea it has Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin are playing those same, federal contractors.
Wait,
I'm like,
did they not see the trailers?
I mean, even if you didn't see the trailer, I mean, there was another movie released named Sicario. How would you forget that? And somehow people forgot the name of the other movie they watched that they liked, and it's like, okay, I don't get it.
That's a bad sign. That's a bad sign for any kind of franchise building. But then, I mean, I guess this is the other problem.
Maybe it could have been that it switched distributors, because like the first one was like by Universal, and the second was like by Sony.
Was it Sony? Okay, I thought it was like, okay, yeah, no, that would make sense. That would
might be different elsewhere, but
I was wondering if it was Lionsgate, because Lionsgate seem to have a tendency to push franchises further than they need to.
That's true too. I mean, all these studios are eventually going to want to start looking for some other kind of franchise to bank on, but it's going to be very annoying because it's like they're still just kind of forcing everything out as opposed to making sure it merits it. It's going to bring something new and different. And true. With this franchise we talked today, it kind of was just always just about home media, but it had kind of it's definitely a must-see for fantasy lovers, but it's not earth-shattering, it's not earth-changing, but that's okay. Not everything has to be. So
no, agreed. I think we kind of, maybe the online debate you and I started talking about at the start of this cast, I think maybe that's the thing that people miss. I think people miss the thing you and I know, which is that not everything has to be the best thing ever. I don't know where that idea came from. It's like, yeah, maybe because everyone's got access to the so-called classics and can therefore see great films all the time. But those of us who grew up with,
there's an in-between, there's popcorn, there's even just watchable, there's mediocre, which is not the same as awful, unwatchable, or great, so.
Yeah, true.
And this is definitely one of those. It's a laid back fantasy franchise. You're definitely going to remember it because of some of the stars that were involved with it and how weird it was. But much like Highlander, if you can be patient with all the various sequels they made to that, then you can be patient with this. So,
I know people who are not patient with those.
yeah, I know, right? Especially because it's like there's
Uh,
different versions of Part 2 that are way better than the bad version we all mainly know. So it's just like,
yeah.
and
Again,
at the end of the
something I haven't
day,
bothered-
the TV show is a whole different oyster compared to the movies. So it's like,
Yeah.
in many ways, since that's syndicated, I guess you could say that's the best iteration of it by far.
Yeah. I would go with you on that. I took a while to be convinced of the TV show, but once I dived in, I really enjoyed it. I think I've
was
seen
not
all
well
the
advertised.
films.
Yeah.
No. Sci-fi.
It
Well,
was
over here,
syndicated.
Sci-Fi Channel had it, and they did a bad job. Yeah.
I know, right? They would show it at very questionable times, is like when they were done showing Twilight Zone reruns, and same kind of difference here with all these franchises. Like after a while, it's like unless you were keeping up with everything on the video store shelf, you didn't really know what was what.
Oh man, there's a phrase that there's a generation coming up who have no idea about: the video store shelf.
No, nothing. They don't know much, and
Hey, the kids I teach are too young, man. Too young.
that and streaming. What does it merit? It's like streaming has definitely been a better way of covering out what was actually played at a festival versus what's premiering on the internet, because it's essentially that's the new form of direct to video.
Yeah, agreed.
Some of it
yeah.
will never even get physical release. That's the other crazy part, is like some of the stuff is like, unless you're subscribed to this channel, you're not going to be able to buy a personal copy of it.
That
'Cause
that
it's
really
always-
bugs me. I have to say that really
Yeah.
bugs me.
Because what if
Yeah.
the internet crashes?
It does all the time.
Right.
You know,
If an
we're not
EMP
saying
takes
that
it out,
speculative-
that movie's toast.
Yeah. I just having worked in the business, I understand why companies are putting their eggs in the streaming basket, but I also think that making it exclusive is possibly the worst way to fail in future proofing your own archive. I mean, let's be honest, studios don't have the best history in the world of
They
looking
don't
at
care
their own
about
product.
reviews, and they don't want to produce more than they have to. And at the same
Yep.
time, like you say, if you restrict your audience, you can't, no fair saying I didn't get much of my money back. It's like, yeah,
Exactly.
because you didn't have any follow-up release saying you can buy it 3 months from now. Here's the street date to buy this. And it's like, nope, you don't even have that. You don't even have the promo tape that you advertise in the various video stores. Nothing. It's
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that fascinates me so quite a very long time ago, it feels like a long time ago, when I was in the home video
in a
business. I was-
galaxy far away with angels
Yeah,
fighting
it
each
was
other
only a
with
decade.
lightsabers.
It
Sorry.
was only a decade. No, you're right. It's what it feels like. It was only a decade ago, but I was at the meeting. So when Arrow first started their range of reissues,
Arrow
they
releasing, guys, not the TV show.
sorry, Arrow releasing. Yeah,
They do
absolutely, with
region
Arrow.
free Blu-rays. They are awesome, much like
Yes.
Vinegar Syndrome.
I was working for the sales company in a marketing capacity as that was doing their sales, and they'd only done 3, maybe 2 releases at the time, and they wanted to pull the plug straight away because they weren't selling. And
I know, right?
And I was in
is
this
an investment.
meeting in
You
London,
don't
and so
Get your money right away.
right, that was it. So there was myself. There was a guy who was the head of a PR agency. Well, he's now the head of the PR agency. At the time, he was the number 2. This had partly been his brainchild because he knew he could sell it. I knew him. I mean, this is typical British home video industry. Everybody knows everybody, And there was myself, the head of sales, the head of this PR guy, and then the 2 main guys at Arrow. And we all sat down and we were like, they were like, give us a reason not to pull the plug. And, myself and my friend and Alma, the PR guy, we were both like, you cannot pull the plug just because the first 2 didn't work. And they're like, well, why didn't the first 2 didn't work? And we're like, because there's been these Anchor Bay DVDs. They've been out for ages. People know the product.
Right.
I said, you gotta just wait. Let the Romero stuff. We explained to them the long tail, because the long tail was the thing that some people. I was in from the indie side, so I knew what we were talking about. But these guys were like thinking bigger, and we were like, no, you need to you go wait. We're talking about Italian stuff. Get the Italian stuff. You get the full cheese. Get the Argentos, and you'll see how this goes.
Exactly.
And yeah, and thankfully they hung on, and it's like one of those crazy things where I look back at that meeting and I'm like, that meeting was literally the turning point for them. Like they were gonna just jack it in because they did enough other things in other. Yeah, well, they did enough other titles in other areas with their Arrow Academy.
What they were doing was they were jacking off. They weren't. They weren't thinking.
Well, hey, they did do the Tinto Brass titles.
Oh, kinky. There you go. So it's kind of funny how that played out. They were just not. They not only were hoping for a release and hoping for an instant feedback, but like you say, you're managing the marketing department, and so it's like, okay, well, this is not going to happen overnight. You got to sell these X number of units. You got to reserve these number of stores. Otherwise, you won't get anything at all. Why bother? It just amazes.
It was an expensive undertaking, though. That was the big thing. It was their first time going into the whole restoration side of things, and up until and they had to take the plunge. But to be fair, they've survived when everyone else. I mean, all the companies I worked for then are gone, bankrupt, dead, or bought out. There isn't a single company I worked for at that time that still exists in the same format. But they're there. They're still there. They are, and they're bigger than ever. So, they did the right. They've had a few missteps over the ways, but I can't even remember why I brought this up. Sorry, it was something you said.
Well, it's just because we've been discussing just the home video department and just how it's just been ever changing. And like you say, is like Dimension Films. This is around the time they get acquired by Disney, so they had a little extra promotion, and the Weinsteins before we found out they were scumbags.
Yeah, before we all found out, everyone else knew apparently.
Yeah, that's the sad part. Everyone else knew,
isn't it? It's terrible. You know what? It does bug me because I will go back and watch films, and it'll be like, I don't want to let it bother me.
By Bob Weinstein.
Yeah, and all you can think of is who got shafted behind the scenes. Like I want to just enjoy the movie. But I can't because I know that somebody somewhere got screwed over by them. I mean, I'd heard stories about them as in financial terms back at the time when I was in the business, but it was just, I hadn't. This other stuff is just, oh God, vomit inducing.
Well, there's that, and like you say, they got away with it because they'd be angry at the various. Meetings, but they just hid all their, they didn't rape people on set. They just talked shit about them, and then, because they want to suck them off. So it's just like, okay, this is really interesting how, Joel Silver, Scott Rudin are known for being angry, but they get away with it because they're also passionate and, haven't been known to run people over or,
Yeah.
So
is it, if memory serves, didn't Quentin Tarantino say that the character that Saul Rubinek plays in True Romance was based on Joel Silver? The producer at the end when Christian Slater's like, oh man, Body Bags 2, my dad loved that, and he, the one where he's saying, I'll have you killed, and I always, these days, I keep wondering, are we sure, or was it the Weinsteins?
Yeah, I think he was just, that's why I lost a little respect for Tarantino, because and yes, Christopher Walken was in Pulp Fiction, so there's the reference for you guys if you want to be nitpicky. But I did have to lose some respect for him because it was very clear that without them he didn't have a career. But it's like, well, still, these guys are bullies. Don't support the bully, no matter what. You don't have to talk back to them, but you don't in any way act like you're gonna let them make you their bitch. Don't do it. So
yeah, integrity, man. That's what it's called.
I mean, and. We still got Corona going on, and it's amazing how many people are still picking on each other at work. And it's like, how about just be thankful that you're still alive? But to them, it's just indecipherable. They're just like, oh, this is another reason to pick on the weak. And if anything this fantasy franchise taught us, anyone can be weak. Anybody,
Yeah.
even the most powerful, can be defeated. So there you go, guys. This is an inspirational franchise.
I like that. Good ending, man. Good ending.
I mean, we go for campy and sarcasm here. We are not, we love as many Roger Eberts and Rex Reeds as we do all the other just goofy Decker Shadows and online critics of the world. So thank you for joining me. David, feel free to plug yourself.
Thank you. Right. So, yeah, people, you can find me at 48 Consultancy on Twitter and Facebook. Each of my podcasts have got their own Twitter and Facebook page. So, Real History UK, Hustlers of Culture, and Binges and Box Sets. And there will be new episodes of Binges and Hustlers in the next couple of weeks. And then we should have Real History up and running again soon. And this season, we're hoping to actually have a few more historians on. We had one historian on last season to talk about Disney theme parks, which is her specialty, and her book is out this week. We're hoping to get a whole bunch more, including an Anglo-American historian who wants to cover Hamilton with us. So that should be fun. Yeah.
Very neat. Very neat.
Thank you.
It's funny you brought that up because I was encountering a few people that are like, oh, they did a movie version of it? I'm like, yeah, they filmed one of the plays and made it look very theatrical for the most part. So some people just can't keep up, and it was inevitable. And much like the video store contrast, it's amazing how some people are, that's what streaming is built for. They're going by, again, the hits on the site.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully this is a hit, and much like this podcast, we take off hopefully a little more, and this will get posted around January-ish, February. So, thank you again. It was a treat having you on here. So,
My pleasure. Absolutely a joy. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We
Ah.
gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
No, don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we're going to end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of her.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this movie.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be a
did you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up